Okay, it's 6 o'clock, June 16th, 2014, and time to get this regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the San Felipe Del Rio CISD underway. Mr. Overfeld, we have a quorum, correct?
Yes, sir.
Oops. Let the record show that a quorum of the board members are present, that this meeting's been duly called, and notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, if you'd stand for opening ceremonies. First, a moment of silence. And now the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Now that we are open and in session, that brings us to agenda item 4, recognitions. The only item being the Rhythm is Going to Get You, High Student Achievement Through Music Performance by Irene C. Cardwell students, Mr. Nunez and Mrs. Linda Guanajuato Webb.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Today we're here to give you information about the unique way Cardwell Elementary Music Ambassadors present their music and art lessons. I'm very proud of the job they are doing and the initiative they have taken. At this time, I would like to ask Linda Webb, principal of the school, to provide information about their program.
Thank you, Mr. Nunez. Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, board members. First of all, on behalf of Cardwell, we would like to express our sincere thank you to all of the board for your continued support of Head Start and the pre-kinder program. And in alignment with our Head Start outcomes, the pre-K TEKS, our school readiness, and of course House Bill 5, which number one item on House Bill 5 is fine arts. Cardwell is committed to preparing students for kinder, which is our mission, and of course beyond kinder, all the way to the university and above that. The use of music, rhythm, and rhyme have been shown in many studies to help children in their cognitive development and math skills. Music stimulates the brain component that enables thinking, analyzing, and planning, thus enhancing one's organizational skills. Music has been found to improve one's memory, enhance creativity, and have a positive impact on the right side of the brain. Research has also found that the silence between two musical notes triggers the brain cells, neurons, which are responsible for the development of sharp memory. Strong beats cause the brain waves to resonate in sync with the beat being or bringing about higher levels of concentration and alertness. Now, knowing that we have to prepare our students for kinder, knowing the fact that the fine arts includes art and music, and of course knowing my own skills, which is not in music, art, I've got a degree in art, not in music. I have no talent in music. Last year, I took 4 of the ambassadors of music, and I will introduce them in a little bit, to the TMEA conference in San Antonio. While we were in San Antonio, we saw a band, a middle school band. And in that band, they had a steel pan drum, probably the size of the round tables at Ramada Inn. So those of you that have gone to Ramada Inn, you can just imagine how big that steel pan was. Now, what is the steel pan? The steel pan drum was created in the Caribbean islands of Trinidad in the 1930s. It is a tuned percussion instrument and a very special instrument in terms of its suitability for both teaching and learning. It is skillfully timed by hand to produce musical notes. The steel pan is a perfect instrument, as the basic skills are easy to learn and playing the instrument does not require any previous musical experience. I can learn how to play that one. Now, to demonstrate how easy and how learning influences brain development, we have some of the Cardwell Head Start students that are going to play for you. Now, these students were 3 when they entered Cardwell. They are 4, so they will be returning to us next year. And 2 of the ambassadors of music will be playing with them, and then after their presentation, I will introduce the other ambassadors of music. Our ambassadors of music that will be guiding them and leading them is Ms. Belinda Brijalva and Don Olivo. Now, playing the steel pan will be Tino Alacorta, Javier Salas, and Daniela Marufo. Playing the xylophone will be Ashley Hernandez. So I'm going to turn it over to the ambassadors.
Thank you for this opportunity of sharing our students' learning of music with you. They've only practiced for 5 days, 5 sessions of just about 20 minutes each this past week. They actually took time from their summer, and their parents brought them over to rehearse. Mind you, this is a week in progress. Next year we plan on progressing on what they've just started to learn this summer, okay? Thank you for your time, and hope you enjoy that performance.
Like on the inside. It doesn't have any musical notes. It has letters. They're all letters. But each letter goes with a note. So our goal next year is to make poster size of whatever they're going to be playing that has the letter with a note on the bottom. We're not teaching the notes. They have to learn their letters. And as you saw, they're going right to left and left to right, which also cross-lateral movement helps their brain development and their physical development as well. So for us, when they see the notes and the letters, hopefully the visual part will help them as they progress through elementary. And if they end up with Mr. Nanez or any of our music teachers later on, they will be able to relate to that. Now, I mentioned ambassadors of music. As you all know, Cardwell doesn't have a music teacher, but we do want to have a music program that will also help us in our district so that our students will be better prepared by the time they get to kinder and beyond. So, that being the case, we are very pleased at Cardwell to say that Alba Nieto, who is a bilingual teacher, has knowledge of piano, keyboard, and guitar. Jose Nieto, teacher at Cardwell, these are all our regular teachers or aides. Drums, Don Olivo, saxophone, Melinda Brijalva, trombone, Chabel Gutierrez is an instructional aide, tambourine, Angelica Buffon, instructional aide, piano, and then this year we adopted 3 more individuals. Our nurse, Roger Molano, who we just found out this year that plays the drums, so he's part of our group now. Elizabeth de la Mota with the flute, and Erlinda Sangborn with the clarinet. So those, I want to say that I am very pleased and very blessed to have been assigned to go to Cardwell because of the teachers that we have met and what we are doing with these students to prepare them for the next level. And as a board, I know that looking beyond our teachers and not just the grade level that they're teaching, but the skills that they bring with them. So I know that I'm very proud of these teachers, and I don't know if any of the other ambassadors are here. But thank you. Thank you for what you do and the time you give. But not just the teachers, the parents. So I'm going to ask the parents to stand up. So los padres. Thank you.
As you can tell, the eagerness to keep playing is in them. You know, he just can't keep his hands off of it. You know, now mind you, they learned 2 notes on the steel pan drum within just a matter of a couple of days. Coordinating them to play together was another step in the challenge, but they did it. We're so proud of them, and like I said again, you're always welcome to come visit us, and we look forward to presenting again next year.
And what I shared with Mr. Nanez is that we have students in our district that unfortunately, if they don't learn how to play 6th grade, they can play 7th grade. If they don't play 6th or 7th, they might get to play at 8th grade. But after that, I'm sorry, you didn't have the basics, you can't play. So with this instrument, they can learn. Because I know I was playing, Little Miss Muffet or something on it, and I know that Dr. Garza could probably get on that and play since he has a musical talent. So, thank you.
What of Howard Gardner's musical intelligence? Intelligent musical.
Sir? Yes.
Gardner's intelligence is
Thank you
musical.
very much. We appreciate it. It's going to help in their reading abilities as they progress. Thank you, sir.
They want to carry their own stands. They want to carry their own stands.
Don't mess with their instruments. Thank you.
My drum. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 6, board members report. There's a couple of items under this one. First, Mr. Mesa had a request to discuss possibly some guidance and suggestions, student cell phone policy review. Mr. Mesa?
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian. If you recall, board members, we had a very brave individual, a young student that came before the board and did an outstanding presentation on a request that we kind of look at board policy FNCE, which is the use of cell phones in the classrooms, and did an outstanding presentation, to be so brave. And I think he's just a great individual that did an outstanding presentation with, including, he had surveys done, and sometimes, sitting on the board, we do not update policies that might need to be updated. Because I know that as we attend conferences, I heard a keynote speaker, and this is at the legal conference in Corpus about 2 years ago, that said that some of the brightest students are going to be the ones that can access information, in an instant on a handheld device, which would include, everything from a cell phone to iPads and so forth. And I know that our board policy states that pretty much cell phones are not to be brought on campus. If you do, they will be confiscated. Basically what it says, I do have NCE local. It says an authorized district employee may confiscate a personal telecommunication device, including a mobile phone used in violation of applicable campus rules. And then, of course, the legal policy states that, there's a $15 charge that will be imposed on the parents of the individual, and then, to reclaim their cell phone. If it isn't, then it will be disposed properly. And I know that there's a lot of things that we need to look at. I guess what I'm basically asking is that we look at the policy carefully and update the policy to include, the request that the young gentleman made, Miguel de was his name, that it be allowed for instructional use. Because I know back then, as soon as cell phones came in, there's so many things that students were doing with cell phones that were getting them in trouble in taking these, for example, into locker rooms and into restrooms and causing all kinds of problems. So we do have to very carefully look at, the steps that we need to take to make sure that rules are followed. And Mr. Garza, Dr. Garza, if you could access FNCE local, because I know the legal part of it is the same everywhere. When you look at Dallas ISD or San Angelo or Del Rio, we find the same legal policy that states pretty much that there will be, cell phones cannot be brought on campus. If it's taken out, then it will be confiscated. FNCE, you can just,
Legal?
local. That's basically what it says. A confiscated personal telecommunication device shall be released for a fee determined by the board, which, that's part of the legal part. In accordance with the student handbook, and the student or the student's parents may retrieve the device after paying the fee. If a personal device, telecommunication device is not retrieved, the district shall dispose of the device after providing notice required by law. Now, could you go into the Dallas ISD and same thing, FNCE? Board of Trustees. And then policy, yes, procedures. If you scroll down where it says board policy online, go into that one right there.
And FS, same or?
FNCE. And then local. And it's very short, but basically it says that for safety purposes, all students may possess telecommunications devices such as cellular phones, pagers, and beepers, which, that's already outdated. But however, such devices shall not be visible and shall remain off during instructional times unless approved by the teacher or administrator. So again, it would be put to good use in the classroom, again, being that it would be a teacher instructional purpose for the use of the cell phones. And the use of cellular phones or any other device capable of capturing images is strictly prohibited in locker rooms, as I mentioned, or restrooms, areas while at school or at school-related or school-sponsored event. Guidelines regarding other electronic devices shall be addressed in the student handbook. And if we, look at what we have currently is, we allow, for example, iPads like at freshman school. And yet, not everyone, has the iPad. I know that middle school, they had their Konos or what? Kunos. Not Kono. Kono's the radio station center. But the Kunos, and then, of course, the freshmen had their iPads. But I think it would be wonderful if, almost everyone owns a smartphone. And if they could be used for instructional purposes, I think it'd be to our benefit. But again, I guess what I'm requested is that we set aside some time to review board policy FNCE and then establish some procedures that we can look at to determine what parameters we'll take and if the rules are violated. Yes.
Mr. Mesa, board members, we considered the young man's recommendation, and there's a couple of things that I'd like for the board to keep in mind, and I think even before the board would come together to discuss FNC local, here's what I propose. We put together a superintendent student advisory council, and the young man, because we were so impressed with his presentation, we asked Dr. Zuniga to put him on the council. And what we shared with the student advisory council is that we would discuss different policies, and the first one would be FNC local. We set a meeting, Betty, the meeting is for next Wednesday or Thursday? Wednesday. Where we will begin that discussion with the students. There's a couple things that we have to keep in mind. The $15 fine, obviously, that's in legal, so that doesn't go away. But how we address it in the handbook, obviously, has implications for what the students can and can't do. So I would just ask the board to be patient. Let us visit with the students to see, so we can incorporate all aspects from the students' view, from the administration side, and then let us propose something to the board at a similar time when we get together. But I want to make sure that we're not rushed in talking about it with the students, that we can have a good 2 meetings with them to really flesh out what they're willing to support. Because if we can get the students buy-in, then we can move forward. I'm all for them accessing for instructional purposes, but we also have to keep in mind that we're about to go on a one-to-one initiative where everybody's going to have a laptop with access to the internet. Now, having said that, there's other applications that the students can use on the phones, and we'd love to explore those. But it does, coming from a district that did allow the use of cell phones during the day, we just have to make sure that everybody's in agreement. So if y'all will let us visit with the kids for a couple meetings, and then after that, if y'all want to have a workshop, and we can recommend what the students proposed, and then we can also incorporate what the board wishes. That then, Patty, we can incorporate into the student handbook, which we're revising right now. Is that fair?
I think that would be wonderful. When students have buy-in, they'll follow and abide by the rules a lot better than if we impose those. So absolutely, I think it's great, as long as we do it.
So I guess timeline, probably towards the end of the summer, would be something for consideration, or?
Yes. By July, late July, maybe even the July board meeting, we can set a date. I just want to make sure that summer, as we start calling the students, that they're able to come in.
That's good.
Any questions? Agenda item 6B, Teacher-Student Community Forum. This is Cecilia Martinez Lozano.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Garabedian. I just wanted to take an opportunity to have Dr. Rios give us an update as to what has been accomplished as it relates to Teacher-Student Community Forum. I know you just mentioned about having already met with the Student Advisory Council, and I think that's awesome that we actually include the students so that they have a voice. Not that whatever they want they get, because we know that's not going to happen, but at least they get to really participate, and I think that gives them some good experience as well in working in a team. And I know that you've also met with the community meeting.
The House Bill 5?
Yes, right? You had the first meeting. Could you just kind of give us an update on that, and then if you could let us, I'll come back and ask you about the teacher forum piece.
Okay, well, I'll touch on both. We had the first meeting, Michelle Smith I think she's here. And what they did is that they proposed the matrix to the community members to review and make any kind of changes, because it is the committee that has to approve the instrument that we're going to use. Got through that phase. Tomorrow, the committee will meet again. They'll be presented with information that supports, not supports, but that provides them information to adequately rate the district's performance in each one of those domains. That'll be tomorrow. I believe by the next meeting, we'll be able to make a formal presentation of their findings and what we are reporting to the state in terms of what the committee decided. That should all be done by tomorrow. We had it scheduled for Wednesday, but we have that leadership training on Wednesday. So they'll meet tomorrow. Had good participation from the members. The attended.
How many would you say? 10, 15, 20?
Oh, no, it was,
Oh, wow.
There's probably about a good 30 between all the citizens and all the recommendations and the district. We had about 30.
That's great.
but pure community members, not employed by the school, how many showed up?
I say we had about a dozen.
Great.
And as far as the teacher-student community forum, what I did is I reached out to a school district that I'm familiar with that has one established electronically, where somebody can post a question for them to continue to give input into and continue the discussion. And that informs everyone that's interested in reading it, but also informs the administrators or leaders of any concerns out there. So it's open to anyone to post. However, it's tied to the email system, so it is not anonymous. And I, for one, prefer it that way because it's about giving true and sound feedback. So I've reached out to them, and we'll be looking to do the same thing within our system. Now, however, I don't have a timeline for it yet, but we've started that discussion. We got a couple of projects that we're working on with technology, and that one will be the next one. So we hope that by the start of the school year, we'll have something concrete.
I don't know from having had a couple meetings with some teachers that a setup such as that would actually meet at least what I was hoping. There's a feedback there. The teacher forum would be. Let me just kind of share with you what I kind of envisioned. It would actually be a forum where any employee, not just teachers, could actually come and voice their concerns, positive things, not just concerns. I'm not sure that the email thing, I mean, if they come in person, obviously, you're gonna know who they are. So I guess it would be the same as entering an email with a concern. But a place where they would feel safe. It would be an open forum where they would know that there would be no retaliation. Not suggesting that they would be retaliated against. However, it would keep it out in the open. Definitely not a gripe session. The whole intent would be to make sure that we are aware of concerns, as well as giving them a voice. We have, the Student Advisory Council where they have a voice. We definitely want our employees to have a voice. And also, it's almost as if maybe like you asked some of you, well, actually your principals, for recommendations as to who should participate on the Student Advisory Council, maybe actually have the teacher or employees nominate or elect one or two representatives per campus so that they come and they meet that way. Kind of like the Student Advisory Council, we have Teacher or Employee Advisory Council. Again, not that they're gonna get everything that they want, but a really good way to have that conversation flowing.
Okay, yes, I think I understand what you're saying. And again, something that I've had experience before is we set up a teacher communication council.
Okay.
And there was 2 individuals by campus, selected by their campus. And they sat and heard concerns from teachers. The concerns were either presented in person by the teacher or presented via one of the 2 representatives on the council. And then it was discussed and solutions were proposed. That is in addition to our site-based council, but I have had experience in a district with something similar, and I think that's what you were.
What was that helpful? I mean,
I think that
was there value added? I mean, we surely I wouldn't want to have you and your leadership team add another layer, add another task, unless it's really going to add value.
I think that it was valuable for the teachers that decided to participate in it and that actually chose to openly communicate their concerns. It was extremely valuable. But again, that requires somebody to be willing to come forward and share their concern, or put it on paper and have their representative share it. But the discussions that ensued based on what was brought up was definitely valuable. Obviously, there were some concerns expressed that really we couldn't do much about, but it brought up the concern either way, and made us all aware of what they were thinking. So sure.
Would you go back to your leadership team and maybe come up with a forum such as that? So
Absolutely.
we really want to, at least from my perspective, listen to what our educators are saying, what our staff are saying. We value them.
I'd like to do both, if that's okay. I'd like to continue to explore the electronic one because everybody can access it. And it just creates a thread of conversation. It's not anonymous. Everybody, it's attached to your email. And then also do the other communication council where we can even open it to community members, so as long as it's related to education.
Okay, that's great. I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on those items? Okay, agenda item 7, reports Buena Vista Elementary Gym project update. Mr. Salinas and Mr. Farrell. Mr. Salinas is ill, so Mr. Dunlap will step in his place.
Good evening, Board. My name is Tom Mustard. I'm with Farrell Brown and Associates, and I'm kind of filling in for David and Tom. And what I'd like to do is just kind of walk you through where we're at with the Buena Vista Gymnasium project. And that's, PowerPoint is what I have, but we also have a handout that will give you kind of just a little update, so you can take it with you if you'd like. Give you an update of what's going on. This is just an overview of the site. You're probably all aware of what we did. We put this new gymnasium, and they had to move the play court off the hill across the fire lane. A fire lane was required, so we built that too. That's the overall site plan. Here's a picture of some of the new paving. This is the new gymnasium, and this is a picture of the new fire lane. You're looking right at kind of the foot of the hill where this fire lane is. It's flattened out and cut now, and they're paving the fire lane. This is a picture of the new play area that was moved across the fire lane, moved off the hill and across the fire lane. And this is a picture of the inter-building connection, showing the existing building and the new gym. They are currently installing all the structures up, and they're installing the finishes now. This is an inside look at the building. The word has it that they said mid June they'll be installing the floor in the gym. So my understanding that's going to happen within just the next couple of days, is that the gym floor will be going in. This is a view of the mezzanine. See, the ship's ladder is laying on the floor right there. There's a ship's ladder that goes up to the roof that has yet to be installed, but they're about to do that. All of the tile work is complete. And this last page just gives you an idea of where they are at with everything. They lack just the completion of the exterior wall panels, the completion of plaster columns and porch soffits, that ship's ladder that we were looking at laying on the mezzanine. Convert to a permanent power to energize the AC, and that's going to be done before June 20th. Complete installation of light fixtures, restroom fixtures, hang doors, and install casework. install mezzanine wire mesh partitions, gym flooring to be installed on June 23rd, and then continue with the site paving, finish all of the site paving work. The original completion date for this project was July 1st, 2014. I think there was a guesstimate at June 5th, but right now the completion date is July 11th. So we're just right at a month to being complete with this. July 10 is the date, the estimated date right now for turnover of the building. The owner will assume that everything will be finished so that you can occupy the space. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Miss has a question.
Dennis, I don't know if you could answer this, but you're very well aware of where the parents park right by where the fire lane, I guess, is going to be. I'm talking about the front of the school, right by the church.
Where the parent pickup is? Maybe we can get a
It's the other side.
Yeah, there's an entrance to the cafeteria for delivery,
right,
and then, because,
right in front of the school.
right. Is that where the,
That's where the buses go.
well, no, a little bit past the driveway where the delivery trucks go into the cafeteria? Is that where the fire lane is going to start?
Oh, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
On the west end,
Yes.
over there going up of Amistad Boulevard. Yeah,
Yes.
That's where it's gonna end, I believe, so, yes, sir.
Okay, so if, for example, there's an emergency, will there be gates there that will be open, or will it be open all the time?
As far as I know, there will be gates to open,
To open?
yes, sir.
Because we currently have parents dropping off kids there in that area and parking along that side. So I would imagine some signs have to go up that it has to be,
Well, there will absolutely probably be some signs that say, fire lane do not block.
right.
I mean, I'm sure that'll happen, we have those at most of our campuses that have fire lanes.
Right. And the reason is, in the morning, they drop off students on that side, which I know it's painted red. It's not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be a drop off, but it's still being done. And then in the afternoon, they're still parking in that area. Now, I'm talking about outside of the red painted area. There's still some parking that now would be the entrance of that fire lane. So some changes have to come about.
I'm sure that's going to happen, sir.
Okay.
I mean, all of our fire lanes are clearly marked and marked with no parking, so I'm sure that'll happen.
As long as, I guess, parents know that that's going to be a change that's coming this new year, because as it is, we're kind of landlocked in there, and we're using the space available at the churches and on the side streets and everywhere. There's hardly any parking there anymore.
Yeah, well, once that parking opens up, and the fire lane will not be used unless, of course, there is a fire.
Yeah.
It should be clear.
Yeah. Well, I know the parking will be for the employees, but the parents should, I mean, something needs to go out for the parents.
It's still limited there anyway, no matter how you look at it, the visitor parking.
I guess what I'm asking is, hopefully there'll be some letters that go out to parents that there's a fire lane that cannot be obstructed at any time.
I'm sure there will be, and I'll absolutely address that with Mr. Salinas.
All right, thanks. Thank you so much.
Dr. Rios had something to add.
Just want to share the substantial completion date is on the 11th. I visited personally with the contractor today, and there's every expectation that they'll abide by the contract and they'll finish. But I do want to remind everyone that the contract also indicates 30 days beyond that for the completion of the punch list. But everything looks good. I was very pleased with the work around the clock, including Saturdays and some Sundays. This, obviously, I'm excited about it. It's my first project with the district, but it will be done on that day. But we do have 30 days on the punch list afterwards, as per the contract. But there's every indication that everything's gonna be fine.
Just a quick question. I think at our last meeting, it was scheduled to be completed on the 5th. Now it's the 11th.
There
There
was,
couldn't have been a rain
can
delay.
you go back? No, can you go a couple slides back?
Yes, sir.
There, right there. At the last meeting, the architect described that this covered area here was initially supposed to be added or attached to the building, but there was an I-beam that was supposed to be there as per the drawings, and because it wasn't, they had to do that extra work, those pillars that are there and all that cement work. So I think that they were awarded 5 days at that time. 4 or 5 days is what the architect and Mr. Salinas in the contract agreed to. Our goal is, you know, the reason we pushed the project at the end of the last year was so that only one school year would be interrupted, and that when we start in August, everything would be fine. And right now, there's too much parking along the street, but we should be just fine.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7B, information on grant award submitted to TASB Risk Management. Laura English is presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, board members. We submitted a loss prevention reimbursement grant application to TASB Risk Management Fund. We were granted a reimbursement of up to $4,000. We will be purchasing steel-toe shoes for the maintenance and warehouse staff, and also for the transportation mechanics. This grant application was approved back on February 2014. Do you have any questions?
Any questions on this? It's an information item. No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 7C, attendance report.
Again, we shared the attendance report via the update. We can go through it again if you like. What I'd like to report to the board today is that our CFO has provided the information to the consultant that we hired to help us look at the data to see what part on the reporting can be improved on. But more importantly, we began discussions in the cabinet, and we'll meet tomorrow with the high school principal to talk about how we rearrange the services directly related to attendance. For example, currently we have the campuses trying to implement the steps that we've outlined in our policy and then reporting to the district for filing. Dr. Garza and I also visited with the judge that hears the cases. And what we're trying to implement for this coming year is a model that a couple of the districts use, where you actually have the truant officers / attendance clerks have letters divided by the alphabet at the schools, where they directly do the case management with the students, so that there is a more timely filing, and not that the filing is the ultimate goal, but rather that the interventions that we outline as part of our attendance policy are completed. In visiting with the judge over this last week, she was very agreeable to for us to file truancy, and then to tell the student, you are going to go to court. Truancy is already filed. However, if you want the judge to give you any type of deferred adjudication, you must complete your hours, your makeup hours between now and then. So that by the time the student comes to court, they've already been given every chance. And then unfortunately, none of us want to see people fined, but at a minimum, you pay a court cost because you were giving multiple chance because of the case management you had up to that point. I think that that's a clear, a strong step in the right direction for addressing our attendance. So the efforts that Yanakani's that we've contracted with, coupled with the efforts that we'll do on campus, I think will yield us some results. We did some figuring, and if only we increase the attendance by 1% district-wide, that yields a little bit over $500,000 additional dollars. A 1% increase in attendance will give us about $560,000 of revenue. So that even if we were to add one position so that we could divide the student body adequately to do that case management, it would be well worth our investment. And more importantly, the kids would be in school and have a better chance of being academically successful.
So you anticipate obviously needing additional employees to roll the case management piece out?
Yes.
Is it one per campus?
We would consider One per campus, yes. Two additional people, but only one at the middle school and one at the high school. And then they would have 1 or 2 days, one day out of the week or one day every 2 weeks, they would do case management at the elementary. But really, we don't file as much at the elementary. It's at the secondary campuses that the help is needed. Now, we also, just to be open, we want to consider all district personnel and how we're using them right now. Because it's not always about adding more personnel, rather looking at the people that we already have working at attendance and how we can better use them. And I just want to be clear about that, because if somebody gets reassigned to the high school to do the same duties, but working from the high school, well, we just have to be open to that. Now, we're not ready to say that yet, but we're definitely looking at that. And by the next board meeting, we will definitely have an update as to how we intend to restructure it. And if there's budget implications, well, then those will come forward with the approval process.
Mr. Mesa?
I guess, as long as we, look at the FAST report at some time before we, increase personnel.
Absolutely.
We need to study that carefully.
And Mr. Mesa, that's exactly why we want to look at the current duties that other people within the organization are doing and how we can become more efficient. But every time we talk about changing somebody's duties, I understand it creates, it creates some frustration amongst the individuals, but at the end of the day, we have to do what's in the best interest of the district and the students.
Now, when you say high school, would that include freshmen as well?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Because we have, I think we have absences there that would need to be.
I'll just share this with everyone. As we were visiting with the judge, she was, I think, somewhat surprised that our attendance district-wide is higher than the state average. Now, having said that, we can't just sit here and say our attendance is higher than state average. We recognize that by improving our attendance 1%, it will yield over $500,000 more in revenue. But as everybody knows, the higher you are, the higher it is to get to that next level. It's easy to go from an 85% to a 90%, but it's more difficult to go from a 96% to a 97%. And that's what we're aiming for. But we hope to get the best results at the secondary level, where we tend to see the lower attendance rates.
Other questions? Agenda item 7D, update on district's instructional programs. Dr. Garza? Dr. Rios will be presenting.
Do we need to turn the TVs over a little bit this way? If we can. That
Are they
first one. That first one, I think we can. If I break it, well, then we'll see.
This looks Mama's fault, because she requested.
Well, actually, it's not too.
Oh, look at that, it does move.
Does that work? The audience has the one over here. I think we'll see.
Everybody see that?
We'll stand over here, that's okay. What we're going to visit with y'all about today, we're going to go over the data that we received. Now, we'll share with y'all, this is all preliminary data. The state obviously has to go back and clean it up, and it won't be until early August, August 10th, August 8th, when they finally give us a final report. However, we have some comparative data that we'd like to share with y'all today. We're also going to reflect on the data and tell you what we're planning about the next steps to continue to improve it. We're going to then talk about a bell schedule for secondary. I know that has been, I guess, also a point of frustration. I want to make sure that we let everybody know we have addressed it. And then I want to talk a little bit about the actual scheduling with the classes that the students need to take, because there was also an issue on the world geography discussion. So I want to go over that, give you all a chance to ask any questions, and then the next month we come, we'll address some other issues that have to do with our instructional programs, but this is what we're going to discuss with you all today. Dr. Garza? We're reporting the data to you based on the indices that the state will use for accountability. And if you remember, at the beginning of the year, last year about this time, not the beginning of the year, but last year at this time, we shared with y'all some campus performance objectives and district performance objectives that would guide our improvement. So today, we're reporting that in terms of Index 1 and Index 2, which are the same indices that the state will use to evaluate the campuses in the district. If we look at reading, the green boxes indicate growth, the red boxes indicate a decrease, and the yellow stays the same. Now remember, this is preliminary data, so for example, in fourth grade reading, it shows that the scores stayed flat. We fully anticipate that when the scores come in, it'll show some increase because they remove all the students that come and go. Traditionally, we can count on anywhere from 2 to 3 points of increase. Now, we have seen some increases as high as 7 points, but we just have to wait till August. So in reading, you can see that our biggest area of concern was third grade and seventh grade, but fifth, sixth, and eighth grade showed some increase, with fourth grade staying the same. Next slide. In math, same thing. Third grade and seventh grade continue to be an area of concern. Fourth grade again stayed flat, and the other three showed some increase. The most significant would be at the fifth grade, was 17%. And the most significant decrease would be at third grade. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why we think we have the decreases there. Writing, writing's looking good, and it's going to look better once they clean up the data. We had a different writing programs. We saw 2% and a 3% increase. And although they may not seem significant now, I think that when the state cleans up the data, you'll see both of those going to the 5%. And we'll talk some more about all these afterwards. Science and social studies was an area of concern. 4% fifth grade science, 4% eighth grade social studies, and eighth grade science is 6%. Those may end up being flat at the end, but still, the fact that we're not flat now or that we don't show some growth is some area of concern. The end of course exams, we went down from 15 end of course to just 5. Very important, on English 1 and English 2, the boxes are gray, and the reason being is that last year, the students took an EOC in reading and an EOC in writing, both at the 9th and the 10th grade. This year, they merged those into one. So it would be, I guess it would be misleading on my part if I shared 51% in English 1 compared to 22% in writing. I'd be bragging about a 29% increase, and I don't want to mislead anyone. It's a new test, so we're just reporting the results as such. But in the areas where we could compare, we see some growth before the data is cleaned up. Algebra 78%. Now that's district-wide. We're counting the students that tested at the 8th grade, the kids that tested at the 9th grade, and the retesters. U.S. history, again, showed the biggest growth, but to be transparent, I'll share with you, this 92%, although it mirrors the state, this is one of the few areas where we're actually mirroring the state or better in a lot of schools.
Excuse me.
Here we tested everybody. The 67% last year was just a number of students that were already at that level. So the fact that we show a growth of 25% is exaggerated. I can tell you that the 92% is right up there with the rest of the state. Now, as we look at the overall picture for accountability, we can see that we had 55% gains with 35% decreases. That says we're looking at the whole picture, and 10% stayed the same. It's not, as I was telling the team, it's not a grand slam, but definitely not a strikeout. Okay? I could say, we're definitely on base. As we review our instructional programs, I'll come back to this and say why it's cause for celebration to show that we have more gains than decreases. Go to Index 2. Index 2, this is where they look at individual students. How many students, regardless of whether they passed or failed, showed some academic gain? And here, you can see the areas in red are where there weren't gains. The areas in green, obviously were gains, and yellow stayed the same. We anticipate that both of those yellows will increase once they clean up the data. But for now, we can see that the area of concern where individual students didn't show gain were these three: fourth grade reading, fourth grade math, fifth grade reading, and seventh grade math. On this area, on the exceeds expectations, which at the beginning of my tenure here, I shared with you all that we were going to increase not only the students that were at the lower level, but also the kids that are in the advanced classes. or that we just expect to perform at a level 3 on the exceeding the expectations. Again, you can see there's more green than red. The numbers are small, 3%, 7%, but it's still moving in the right direction. And again, once they clean up the data, that will go up a little bit. But just to be open, the exceeds, these numbers tend to fluctuate up a lot less than we're gonna see over here. So we can see some of these going from red to green after they clean up the data, but I anticipate that these would stay the same. But still, more increases than decreases. The next slide, Jorge. 55% of our kids met the individual growth that was required. 13% exceeded the growth measure, which means that they're on that group to the right. Again, had more kids than not show improvement, and that's incredibly important, particularly as we go to the next slide, and I'll share some things with you all. There's some things that we have to do different, clearly, some adjustments that we have to make. One of the things is just make sure that we continue to talk about the clear expectations for instruction, that we communicate that across the board, and that we're all speaking the same language. Promoting the teacher's strengths and enhancing the skill sets, understanding that for our students to get better, we as adults have to get better, and that's across the board for all of us. The big part that I want to talk about is just that historic dependency on testing strategies, teaching strategies versus going deep into the content. I'll give you an example. As our students come to 3rd grade and 7th grade, where you see a transition into the tested grade, and then when they go into 7th grade, they see a transition into the secondary test. I tell everybody, our 3rd grade teachers, okay, are as good as teachers in any grade level. Our 7th grade teachers are just as good as teachers at any grade level. So why do we see the drops in there? Well, the reason we see the drops, very respectfully to all of us that work so hard on this, especially the teachers, is because of the rigor that the students are expected to be able to show on the test. And it's difficult, for example, when the student comes with certain deficiencies to the grade level, we have to be honest with ourselves and say we revert to teaching strategies. Why do we revert to teaching strategies? Because it's very difficult to catch up the student on the rigor that's expected that they already bring with them, the depth of knowledge. So if we want to see gains, we revert to strategies. And we frankly said that we weren't going to do that. We're going to work on teaching the content at that deep of a level. So I can proudly say that we had a lot less interventions, a lot less of that drill and kill, and yet our scores showed improvement in some areas. In most areas, it's fair to say based on the data that I shared with y'all, but it talks about changing that paradigm where we're going to go from not depending on teaching strategies, because at the end of the day, the students will not achieve at the level that they're supposed to achieve. I'll give you an example. We follow kids that go on to college and the success rate, where we can, because there really isn't anything that report. But we know that about 3 years ago, we sent, I think it was 10 or 12, how many kids went to the engineering program? 15 kids to the engineering program at A&M. This is their senior year. Of the 15 kids that we sent to A&M on this engineering program, only 1 remains. So if that student graduates a year from today, we would have 1 in 15. But that speaks volumes about the kind of rigor that we've challenged them up to this point. We need to do a better job. I could sit here and say, you know what, we're going to do a lot of drill and kill and not do anything different. But it's not going to get the students the long-term results that are going to ultimately make them successful. So I'm sharing this information with you and telling you, I know that we've heard a lot this year about how uncomfortable it's been to everybody because we have moved away from that drill and kill. You know, our teachers want to teach those passages, and I understand that because they work hard at it, but it will not get us, it will not help us get our students where they need to be. So we need to keep working at how we improve the instructional practices on a daily basis. We've already showed that we're moving in the right direction and getting gains. I know that a lot of the critics out there will point at individual campuses where there were significant decreases. No, we need to address that as well. Clearly need to address it. But when we look at the overall data, you know, those numbers were not manufactured. Those numbers came off the summary reports from the state. We are moving in the right direction. It's just very slow, but it's real work. And I guarantee you that once we get it right, our kids in our community are gonna benefit for years to come. Because we're not buying a program, we're developing all of our skill sets. No, I'm sorry, go back, please. Not, you know, not making excuses, but it's a reality. So as we look at the gains that we made, there's a couple of things that are gonna keep us from really having a true comparison. For example, last year, if you were a bilingual student in your first, second, or third year, your scores didn't count. They just didn't. Now, most of the kids failed. Most of the bilingual students in the first, second, or third year traditionally fail. This year, the state came back and they said, no, it's only the first year kids that we're not gonna count. Your second and third year bilingual kids count. Now, there's a growth measure that if they meet it, we'll give you credit for it. But by and large, bilingual students in the first, second, and third year, don't pass, and very few, if any of them, meet that growth measure. So the results are also skewed by the fact that all the bilingual kids that previously were not counted are now counted in the group. Another area is how we plan. At the third grade, for example, you see a lot of classes self-contained. And as much as we try to focus the development of reading and math for the planning, a lot of teachers found themselves planning for 5 and 6 subjects. And it wasn't fair to them, but that's where it goes back to us having clear expectations for instruction and what we're going to plan with. And what we share with teachers across the board is that the focus is going to be, particularly at the elementary levels, on reading and math through the planning protocol. The flexibility in the planning at times sometimes led to individual planning. And again, these two areas here goes back to just a clear expectation and clearly communicating the district reform. And I'd love to just say, hey, everybody go be successful, and we'll let everybody do what y'all think needs to be done. But there has to be some direction. There has to be a district direction on it. And we just have to get better at it every year. But again, I go back to the data, and as much as concerned people speak when they're frustrated, I understand that. But look at the results. We are headed in the right direction. It's just going to take us a couple of years to make sure that we get it right, that we do things, that all of us do things better. Some of the things we're doing to develop the teaching capacity, we're presenting the Abidos Writing Institute. The Abidos and the letters, the very significant and important thing about that writing program and that early literacy program is that it is geared towards increasing the teacher capacity. It's not a program where we're buying and we're going to ask the teachers to do just A, B, C, and D, and then you're going to get the results you need. No, it talks about improving the teacher capacity. Like, for example, today, one of my lifelong best friends is working with math teachers to help improve their teacher capacity. There's 6 teachers working today or the rest of this week at the middle school, getting better at their math skills so that they can go and then be certified for 7th through 12th grade math, which is a new certification. Our focus has got to be on developing our capacity, not on a specific program. And these two programs, much like what we're doing with the algebra teachers, work today. Collaborative planning teams developed and trained to facilitate the planning protocol. That goes back to what we said, that we were going to have our cluster leaders lead the planning protocol. So working with them to work with the teachers. And again, the focus on student improvement through the means of critical thinking, that goes back to the planning protocol. We have to stay on that. We have to stay on our grind and continue to talk about depth and rigor. Early literacy, we hired an early literacy coordinator, and this letters program is directly related to what we're doing with the teachers there. We said that we were going to focus a planning protocol on the reading and math, ELA and math, and then using our coaches, our instructional coaches. One of the added duties is going to be with mentoring and modeling for the new teachers. So where do we go from here? There's a couple of things as we were reviewing the data. When we looked at the groups that had the highest increases by campus, we don't want to say that we want every teacher to loop, but we want to work with the principals to say, okay, how many teachers who taught 3rd grade can follow the kids to 4th grade, or they taught 4th grade can follow the kids to 5th grade? Because where we saw the highest increases is where there had been looping, where a teacher who taught their kids last year at 3rd grade and now at 4th grade had significant increase. Don't want to mandate that for everybody because that just changes a lot of people, but we definitely want the principals to consider it. We have to do more on the science and the writing plan against the district to make sure that we're moving together. And just the cross-curricular applying instructions so that everybody from third on the way to high school knows what the previous grade is doing and what they can do to better support it. All right, that's a summary of the data. Before we go into this next part, I want to make sure that I just give you all the opportunity to ask anything.
Dr. Keys?
Well, I'm glad you stressed about moving away from the rote memorization, the drill and skill. And I think now that we're getting familiar with the new test now's the time for the teachers to start considering also with all the planning and all that. Start thinking more towards analytical thinking. Move up the blue taxonomy ladder. You mentioned it right now, but we gotta get out of that comprehension and knowledge level and move up to application, analysis, synthesis, and ultimately evaluation. Well, that's good. Good direction.
And that's what we're looking for, but that just takes,
Yeah, at this
takes
time.
a whole lot of work because it's a whole different approach.
Mr. Mesa?
Dr. Rios, on that 55% growth, does that include the bilingual?
That's the summary report and includes all of the students. But we did not see increase we saw some increases in bilingual, but overall, they were very limited. Bilingual, as we've talked about all the time, is I don't want to use the word Achilles, but it is the area that needs the most attention from us and different practices.
So it's not included in the 55?
The 55% on the summary reports, then,
Doesn't.
it doesn't include to the comparison group either, Mr. Mesa. So
Sure.
because it's one report to the next.
Right. And then my other question would be, I know science fifth grade, they're lacking a lot of resources, and I'm talking about, everything from actual teaching materials to perhaps units of study that would include a lab, experience, and they don't have a lot of material to work with. And is there anything being done for that you're thinking about?
Well, like I said, that we're going to be working with science teachers to see everything that we can offer for them, but have to go back to the first part of applying instruction, and whatever resources they need as a result of that collaborating for instruction, we will absolutely provide it for them. But we're going to be pulling the science teachers from the district-wide together from all 7 campuses and see what we need to do to move forward together. Buying the resources is definitely part of the plan, but that's not where we start. We start with planning the lesson and saying, okay, what is it that we need? They have plans to meet this summer in preparation for it, and we'll certainly buy the resources. And I shared with the teachers when I met with them last year that for this coming year, we would look at buying resources for them, but once we fully understood exactly what we needed. So the long answer is yes. The short answer is yes, we're going to buy it, but there has to be a plan tied with it.
Right. And I guess another follow-up question would be, we look at fifth grade and we think like all the blame goes on fifth grade teachers, but there's a lot of content that has to be done in earlier years. And so that's an area that I know over the years, in my experience as an administrator was that not all teachers like science. And so I'm going to skip the science part of this, my grade level, but it's important because it shows up at fifth grade. And so that's a very difficult area to understand, that it does not fall on the shoulders of the fifth grade teachers. It falls on everyone, including from kinder on up. That I hope gets to be communicated to everyone, that, everybody has to buy into that science program from the early grades, up until they're tested.
Other questions at this point?
We're going to go into the graduation programs. What we want to share with you all on House Bill 5, there's 2 primary goals of House Bill 5. One was to increase student course selection flexibility, and the other one was to limit the amount of end-of-course exams. They went from the 15 exams to just those 5 listed there: algebra, biology, English, English 2, and U.S. history. But on the increasing the student flexibility, what you will see, the biggest part there is that they went from a 4x4 requirement for the 4 subject areas to decreasing it. You still have 4 in English, 3 in math, 3 in science, 3 social studies, where students will be offered more flexibility to meet the graduation plan. This is on the foundation program, though. On the recommended program, which is now the endorsement, you still have the 4x4, with the exception of social studies, you only have 3 instead of 4. Okay. Obviously, for us, the default plan is not the foundation program, rather the endorsement program. Go to the next slide. We're going to talk about the bell schedule before we go review the actual classes. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Assa and the committee that dealt with bell schedule.
Thank you, Dr. Rios, Mr. Garbedian, members of the board. Good evening. What we did about 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was, Dr. Rios came to me and asked me, is there any way we can get several people together, which are teachers, to talk about the actual bell schedule that we have for secondary campuses. So it was essential that we chose the people from the campuses to come in and work. And one of the other things that Dr. Rios said, I want to make sure that the direction that's being created, the direction that you're using to create this schedule is strictly the teachers, not principals, not you or anyone else. So there was a big committee that we sat down for about 3 or 4 hours together, and they came up with a bell schedule for the high school, including 9th grade, the middle school, and also the 6th grade. At 6th grade and middle school, they have 8 periods, 8 credits, also at the high school. So at this time, I would like to ask one of our teachers that was there for the high school, and I think the rest of the people that are here as a committee are here from the 6th grade all the way up to high school. So at this time, I would like to ask Mr. Castaneda to come and tell us a little bit about what happened that day. Before I do that, let me pass out the schedule that
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. On May 22nd, a group of campus leaders came together to address an issue voiced by our superintendent in response to community concern. This committee had also met with their own departments prior to this to get ideas and to review different schedules that would be possible for us. The criteria needed to be met was 8 credits possible, shorten the length of day, and 3, the time that lunch was going to be held. Several schedules were reviewed from throughout the state, different examples. After careful consideration of difficulty each of the school programs might encounter, it was unanimously decided that the Delaware Freshman, Delaware High School blue and white schedule was the most accommodating for our students, our faculty, and the community. This schedule was created by our committee. The committee members from Delaware High School are Peggy Martin, Martin Sandate, Linda Corbell, Nilda Benavides, Eddie de la Rosa, David Mortimer, and Susan Cadena. From the Del Rio freshman campus was Rebecca Ortiz, Debbie Salinas, and myself, Jack Castaneda. We met the established criteria for the 8 credits, the shorter days, and the earlier lunchtime. We believe this time frame is more conducive for extracurricular activities such as athletics, UIL academics, clubs, organizations, tutorials for students, and also the own student obligations such as family and work. Most importantly, instruction will not be hindered. By shortening the day, we are addressing the students who are exhausted by previous long days. The rationale for selecting 9 periods was due to a split lunch possibility, which would have negative issues when it has been implemented in the past. As a committee, we believe that this schedule addresses the concerns of students, parents, faculty, as well as administration.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for either Mr. Castaneda or myself on the bell schedule?
Yeah, just a question. Is the first lunch period, period A, is lunch typically that early?
It just depends on what schedule you're looking at, but when we looked at other schedules throughout the district, that was typical, ma'am. It's not unusual for us to have something like that.
It is not unusual.
It's not unusual. Did I say
What
usual?
time
It's
was
not
the first
unusual.
lunch before?
Elementary. It's like
Before,
past
I,
year.
before, like
Like this
this
past year?
year, I do believe it started at 11.
It's about 30 minutes, 25 minutes difference.
But ma'am, but the opposite of that was what time did the last lunch start?
Yeah, the last lunch finished at 2:01. So
Yes, yes, of course.
The other thing we addressed was that with this was that, we had a coach, we had some CTE people in this committee, and they felt that we spoke to the coach and he said that it was fine. They have athletic period, 6th period, and so they would have, if they had a lunch, they would still, be strong enough to get through, because that was our concern. For the CTE classes, that was also, conducive to their program because of the work programs that they have. So this was really the best schedule that we could have, even if, we're used to having brunch. I mean, it's not, it's better than having the late lunch at 1:30 or whatever time. 2:00.
Mr. Overfeld?
We got on their announcements 8:45 to 8:50, but then at the bottom, with the star announcements will be posted electronically. There, so you're saying you're gonna take 5 minutes to say it and then post it electronically as well?
The pledge, having to do the pledge can be done in 1 minute, the pledge with the Texas pledge, and we just allotted that in there to have the 5 minutes, and also we wanted it to be numbers that we could remember.
And no matter what, any announcements are actually sent out electronically.
Since we're going to the initiative with having the pads and having the laptops, at least this way the kids, if they're gonna be responsible, they can look up the announcements about anything they need. So we felt having to interrupt time, it was not necessary, they could just have them.
This is the first time it's being presented to anyone. I mean, this hasn't been shown to,
We haven't put it out. The committee members,
We
obviously.
discussed it with our departments and then took it to the committee.
were there
we
any
had
students on that
like a
committee?
fallout to talk with our own departments, just to keep it, just to see what it would feel like. If you notice, we do have 2013, 2014, just to keep it without looking like a flashy thing. So there are some small little typos on there, but again, just to keep it as a conversation. And again, it's just to get some feedback, what was gonna happen, what we're gonna get going. I believe, Dr. Rios met with some students and they discussed scheduling like this, so there's a lot of feedback going around, with the teachers, students and the like, to try to come to a consensus if this would be something that's, and like I said, the teachers came, where we all came as a committee, we jockeyed around with different schedules, we looked at Laredo's, we looked at Dallas, we looked at different little, scheduling, some more complicated than, what we had. But at the end of the day, we did shorten the schedule. I know it still has 9 periods, but again, it's for, we started thinking about like the CTE department, athletics, there's more opportunity, for students to take more courses, maybe they wanna get more certification, a few more classes in there. But again, just meeting on the criteria, going back on what we said, that we're trying to accomplish. We shaved, I believe, about 9 to 10 minutes off the morning and about 17 minutes off the afternoon. And still kept the opportunity for students in case, they made a blunder when they're in 9th grade. Some students make blunders. They're able to recoup that the next year. Students try to get ahead, maybe because we're having some programs with to try to get, college readiness sometimes. So there's that opportunity also as well built into all this.
Mr. Mesa?
I was listening to the names of the people in the committee, and I think you have enough math people in there, because usually the math teachers are the ones that want, no, they want more time with their students because of,
We kept, 45 minutes of instruction, so, that's, after 45 minutes, the kid's gonna listen anyways.
well, I guess it would be okay as long as there's, no interruptions, because, you know how it is, when students come in and if there's interruptions, that's what, gets into the instructional time. that the math teachers usually want more time with their students so that, they can.
And that's something, sir, that we did discuss. I even did in our heads when we were meeting with our own, well, at our department as well, and I'm sure they did also the rest of the persons that you're mentioning. We did assess and say, well, is this enough time? Is it less time? Is it not enough time? So, and a lot of practices that we're doing with this formative assessment, with the planning protocol, we're taking shorter time, chunks, if you will, to discuss, instruct, then see some small practice, decide if they're actually grasping it, and then coming back and doing it again. So it's not, I think, I guess we're trying to get away from instructing the whole, as far as nonstop until the end of the class. So we're starting to break it off into chunks. So that's where we started looking at this. Well, how many chunks do we have? And there was plenty of time. And it looks like it's not a lot of time. And we're always going to say as teachers, there's not a lot of time. But at the end of the day, when we actually broke it down and looked into it, it was actually going to be more than enough time, actually. Of course, interruptions, things are going to happen. That's, sir, I know you've been in teaching, most of y'all also as well. So, that's something that we cannot foresee, is that called. But again, we did, before meeting the committee, we did discuss it amongst our different departments to see, kind of give ourselves, is this going to be enough, not enough? Are we going to just put this out there and it's going to just be shot down by our own selves? So that's why we did have a lot of input before we actually met as a committee. And then as a committee, we brought our concerns from each area and then actually came up with this. And I guess I haven't heard any feedback or otherwise as we fell back out to see what they thought. And to date, I haven't heard any negatives. Of course, the 9 periods, but that was the alternative, have 8 periods with a split lunch. And then we discussed it would be unfair to some students because have them eat lunch, go break it, or I'm sorry, get instruction, go to lunch, kind of wind back down and come back to the second part of the class. So that's why we, even though a lot of us or some persons decided that maybe 9's too much, but with this case, it kind of kept a little bit more continuity, let the student not be interrupted in their instruction time with a split lunch option.
And I think the key word there is that it was a unanimous decision. Everybody brought their concerns and we discussed them and that was the final outcome. And everybody was very happy with it.
Right. I know the disadvantage of a split lunch, but I also recognize the fact that, we want our students to be successful, and so I'm thinking, my mind is going, we're shortening the day, where a lot of districts are increasing the day, and so the bottom line is I just, want for the students to be successful, and as we have more rigor, in every content area, that these students be successful at the end of the year.
And by the way, Mr. Mr. Castaneda is a math teacher.
Yes, I know. And Mr. Mortimer, as well. So.
Ms. Cadena was there.
Ms. Cadena
tends to be.
I know. I was listening to the names and I'm thinking, these are math teachers, and usually they're the ones that want the longer periods with their students.
Right, and I did bring that up to them when we were there in the meeting, and that discussion was amongst them, and they came up with that. I do not want to walk out of here without us telling you that not all the schedules are the same. 6th grade is different than Del Rio Middle School and high school. At 6th grade, they did not want to change anything because their scores were pretty good. There was a lot of increases, and they wanted to keep it the same. So I don't want you to walk out of here without you knowing that at Del Rio Middle School, they have decided to do 8 periods with a split lunch. But she will be very careful in choosing those periods for that split lunch, because they also talked about that, and they didn't want the same thing that Mr. Castaneda was saying, to put some teachers in that situation. But I do believe that they had plenty of discussion, there was plenty of representation there, they took it back to their campus, and they were okay with it. Mrs. Gomez is here, if there's any questions for her on that, because I don't want to walk out of here and for you guys to come and say, wait a minute, split lunch? I thought you said there was no split lunch.
Mr. Overfeld?
First bell at Del Rio Middle School?
The first bell at Del Rio Middle School will be?
Last bell?
3:20. It ends at 3:20. Currently, we end at 3:35.
I think the concern, if I may ask you a question, the concern there was always the traffic, between the elementary and, so, there was a little bit of, this year, it's like, it was more civilized. because usually they were so close that everybody got there at the same time and it was very congested.
That has been there since you were a principal, sir, and it's something that's very challenging. It's a lot better now with the way that it's structured there in front of the campus at the middle school, the way they come in and drop off kids. A lot more structure now.
Other questions?
Did elementary change? And will all elementaries be on the same schedule?
As of this point, we have not changed their schedule. It's going to be the same schedule for elementary,
For all of the campuses?
all campuses.
And with the slight change, there shouldn't be any negative impact on busing, I'm going to assume.
No,
Also, we communicated that to Mr. Salinas. He says that there won't be any conflict with that.
Thanks for your work in trying to.
Thank you, sir.
last part of the presentation, I'd like to continue, Mr. President, was we had a discussion about world geography, and we started the presentation at the beginning talking about the course flexibility. But what I wanted to do was take you all through a generic student schedule for the freshman and sophomore year so that you could see how every course they take is a requirement for graduation up until that point. So if we look at a freshman student, they're required to take algebra. Obviously, a handful of them take advanced math because they began algebra. That's just a handful of them. Biology, English 1, BIM, which is Business Information Management. That's by board policy a requirement for graduation. Spanish 1, they have to take a foreign language. PE, band or athletics. The students either can take PE, band or athletics. So either one of them. It's a little difficult when the student wants to be in band and athletics, and then that is going to bump out one of these classes. Or if a student wants to take ROTC and athletics, and I know plenty of students that do that, again, that bumps one of these classes to the next year. Writing and CT. Writing is not a district requirement, but because of our scores and how they came out with, we've encouraged every student, and for the most part, every student does take writing at both the freshman and sophomore year. So as you can see, there isn't very much to move out of there. Obviously, some classes can be bumped to the next year. There's conflicts, like in the case of the ROTC student. Their sophomore year, again, a traditional student would take geometry, chemistry, English 2, and continue with CTE on their pathway, Spanish 2, and again, they're going to take PE, band athletics, or ROTC, writing, and world history. So if you look at the schedule there really isn't any room to add another class, unless the student chose to take a world geography elective, for example, but that would move one of the classes over to the next year. Now, this is provided that the student doesn't fail any classes, and then it works fine. But we can talk about our failure rate in algebra. What's our failure rate in algebra, Dr. Garza? 30%. 30% of our kids are going to fail. How about English 1?
English 1 is less. I would say it's about
7%. So this schedule is working so far, so as long as the students don't fail. As soon as they fail, that makes the next year more saturated in terms of the electives that they cannot take. Going on to the third year. In the third year, we start to see some wiggle room. Again, they're still taking their third math, their physics, their English 3, their U.S. history, speech, and psychology or sociology. Up until this point, everything's required. At this point, they choose if they want to continue with P, banner athletics, or ROTC. And they go into their CT or their endorsement classes. But again, they need these two classes to meet their certification. So all the way through their junior year, if they haven't failed any classes, every spot is pretty much taken up. And as we talked before, the reason that our graduation rate in the recommended plan wasn't as high, one of them is because of the limited amount of classes that they could take through the junior year. Our graduation rate in the recommended plan was lower than most of the state, and there's different reasons. But the amount of classes is certainly one of them. And then we look at their senior year. If everything has gone well for the student, they're required to take these first 3 classes. They can choose to continue with PE band athletics or OTC, and then we want to work out the practicum to finish their endorsement. But very respectfully, participating in a practicum is dependent on 2 things. One, that we come up with a practicum for every one of the endorsement areas, and that the student hasn't failed, and that they passed their exams. Because House Bill 5 also tells us that if a child fails English 1 or math test, they have to take a remediation course before they can go on, because they don't want the remediation course offered at the junior college. If we were to go back and require students to take world geography, that would just add 1 more class on top of what you've already seen. Is a pretty saturated schedule towards their, until their junior year. It is the recommendation of the administration that we continue offering world geography as an elective, so that we can continue to work with the students in the fashion that I've described up here.
And that world geography would be offered only at the during the freshman year, but you said they didn't, at any time?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So basically, they'd have to wait till their senior year. Really, that's where you have some flexibility.
Not necessarily. They could choose somewhere in their junior level. They could choose to go to that endorsement, which is the the arts and humanities. If they would like to choose the 5 credits in social studies, they could take it there in place of CTE or the endorsements. That's why I put endorsements.
And again, if we go back to that very first slide, we don't have to go to, you don't have to go to it, but I'll just remind you, the purpose of House Bill 5 was to increase the flexibility. And what they did is that they changed it. Social studies was the only area where they reduced the 4x4 plan to where social studies was only 3 required social studies classes. They kept 4 in math and they kept 4 in science. They didn't do that for social studies. So if we want our students to graduate with that endorsement, then we need to follow suit. Now, we did pick world history versus world geography because the social studies teachers felt that taking world history would help the students on the U.S. history test. It would give them a perspective that would help them understand the context of U.S. history. And that was with teacher input. So that's why we do world history instead of world geography, because really we could have picked either one.
And the other thing that I would like to say, as Dr. Rios has already said, we have to load it up front as a freshman and junior, a freshman, sophomore, and even junior, because it tends to happen that these kids educate themselves and counsel themselves, and all of a sudden they kind of slow down. So I figure if we can get as many credits in the first 3 years so that they can at least get that endorsement, it would be a lot better. Because we have kids, and I know exactly what happens by their senior level. They all of a sudden counsel themselves and say that I don't need Algebra 1 or I don't need physics because I'm going to graduate minimum, and that is very difficult for us and very difficult for the parents to understand that, no, we want you to graduate with a recommended and now the endorsement.
Any questions about anything we presented today?
Questions?
Martinez.
Martinez?
Martinez Lozano, yes. This new schedule begins only with freshmen, the incoming freshmen, or how is this rolled out to your sophomores, juniors, and seniors?
The incoming freshmen are the ones that are exclusive to the endorsement plan described in House Bill 5. Now, our current juniors, or really our current students that are going to be sophomores and up, we have the option of graduating them with the endorsement or with a recommended plan, or the foundation program. They have that option, so our counselors will be working with them to make sure. Obviously, we want to push as many students as we can towards the endorsement plan because that's the direction that we're headed. But that certainly wouldn't keep a student from graduating. They could default to the previous recommended plan or the previous minimum plan.
So has that counseling already occurred?
The counselors visited with the students in terms of selecting their course selection. Dr. Yasta could probably speak more fluently about it.
You're talking about the sophomores from next year and juniors and seniors?
Yes, sir.
Yes. When we we registered the students. They were advised that they could graduate with the endorsements or the recommended program. Most of our kids that are 10th graders, 11th graders, and 12th graders are going to graduate with a recommended program. Once again, the difficulty there is that in those programs, the recommended distinguished is 4x4. And that's where they tend to falter because of that Algebra 2 or that physics. But they were counseled when they registered previous to being 9th graders. Now this 9th grade class, the way we did it, our staff from the high school and our staff from the freshman campus and the staff from the Rio Middle School, they all went down there to the Rio Middle School and they met with about 80% of the parents and the students before they actually walked out of there. They had to sign the endorsement that they had selected.
It was individual meetings.
Right.
Very nice. But in summary, what the 3 points I'd like to share with the board, and I'll go backwards. I understand the frustrations of the world geography teachers, but House Bill 5 has been clear in the directions that they've given us. And to do something different would be to create yet another obstacle for our students to graduate in that recommended plan. In terms of the bell schedule, we discussed a whole lot of options. The marching orders to the principals and Dr. Garza was not to intervene to let the teachers agree on what they wanted. We did set some parameters. We have to give students the opportunity to earn a credit, and that's pretty much because of what I explained. And then the first one that we talked about was on the achievement, the student achievement, because I know that that has been a big topic of discussion throughout the year on the district-led reform. And it is difficult because unlike other programs, we're addressing every individual teacher and we're working with them to be able to implement this reform. And it's not easy, but we think that by and large, we have the support of most of the teachers and the results show that it hasn't failed. Has it been difficult? Absolutely, without a doubt. Were there missteps? Clearly. Was any of them due to just maliciousness or just us being deficient in any way? No, it's just part of the process. But we are certain that as we continue with this reform and focus on developing teacher capacity and administrator capacity and superintendent capacity, we will develop the capacity of the students to be successful for the long term. So thank you very much, and we look forward to continuing with our initiatives.
Thank you.
Questions? Thank you. Could I get a copy of the PowerPoint?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item 8, consent agenda. About 7:35. There's a couple of pages on the consent agenda, starting with 8A and going through H. Now, consent is agenda item 8, starting with item A, and then it goes all the way through to H. Oh, I'm sorry, no, actually it goes through I, but there's nothing under I. So, any board member wish to pull an item from the consent agenda for discussion? Ms. Lozano?
I don't know that it needs to be pulled. I just have a quick question.
Okay, she has a question for,
It's number 5 under F. This is the warehouse freezer. Haven't we already approved the warehouse freezer?
You, ma'am, the board approved the freezer, but two things happened. One, we didn't buy it yet because we had to lay the foundation, the slab of cement. And the second is that this freezer, or any freezer, is a little bit more expensive. So rather than just us spend the money and say you had already approved it, you approved a specific amount. So we're bringing you the updated amount. What was the difference in price, Ms. Valdez?
It was 72,000 that we had approved, so I think the difference will be about 24.
And because there's been substantial favorability this year in our budget, it's no problem covering the difference. It is going to be covered with local funds, though, whereas before, the money that we were going to use.
72,000 is for food service, the remainder for general fund. However, we will continue to evaluate the food service fund and the visibility within this year's
questions, but they were answered in the report. Mr. Mesa?
Yes, I had one, and that was, G6.
Did you want to pull it for discussion, or do you have a
I have
question?
some questions.
Okay.
Regarding to that. Because it's such a big amount, just wanted to ask, where the funding is coming from that?
We have local funding, to provide for that, Mr. Mesa, and we've worked that into the budget for the coming year. We don't believe that in any way it's gonna, affect what we need to do.
So this is something the counselors will be doing with the students?
What happened at the beginning of the year, we promised to address bullying, hazing, and to see how we would guide the students through the programs. And we considered a whole lot of programs. Mr. Valdez, if you have any specific questions met with parents, met with teachers, met with counselors, and they decided that this program is one that could be implemented best throughout. Now, this only covers 4 elementary schools. We're gonna increase the implementation of it every year till we covered everyone, because it is a very expensive program. So we're gonna be phasing it in. But it will be, there'll be a component clearly for the counselors, and some for the teachers in terms of the practices that we do on a daily basis.
Okay.
Other questions? Like I said, I had questions, but I think the report covered them. I had them checked here, and I don't have questions. Ms. Falcone, there is a minor edit on one of the minutes, and it's my fault, because I know what I gave you had my terrible handwriting, so I'm sure you missed it. It's on page 30, the June 9th workshop. Because I went back and I looked, and I think you probably just weren't able to read it. There under A, where it says professional development needs, comma, I had on there district goals and superintendent performance goals. I think somehow we left out the district goals and superintendent. So if you could just put that in, it was just a minor edit, my fault. Okay, anything else on the consent agenda? Okay, if there's nothing to be pulled or discussed or questions, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda? Ms. Martinez-Lozano has motioned. Is there a second? Mr. Overfelt is second. All in favor by a show of hands. It's unanimous. Motion carries. That brings us to the time where we recognize those who donated that were on the consent agenda. Is there a board member who wishes to read that list? Mr. Overfelt.
Alrighty. Donation summary for the June board meeting. American Auto Body Repair, $50 to the Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Amistad Industries Limited, $100 to the Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. An anonymous donation and $450 to North Heights Elementary. Benedix de Mexico, $300 to the Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Border Federal Credit Union, $200 to the Del Rio High School Mariachi de Medianoche. Border One Stop, $50 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Box Tops in the amount of $1,442.54 to Buena Vista Elementary. The Del Rio Bank and Trust, $500, Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Del Rio Chamber of Commerce, $100 to the Del Rio High School FBLA. Del Rio Ford, $100, Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Del Rio Towing and Wrecker Service, $100 to the Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Easy Stop Convenience Store, $50 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. First in Texas, $300 to Del Rio Middle School Robotics. Gaddy's Pizza, $50 to Del Rio High. H's Audio and Accessories, $125 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Jane Crane, $100 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Life Touch, $147.12 to Del Rio High School Journalism. Life Touch in the amount of $2,185.54 to Del Rio High School Student Council. Life Touch, $75.17 to Del Rio Middle School, as well as $1,299.60 to Garfield Elementary. Marco Motors, $25 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Palenque Tacos and Grill, $25 to the Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Paul Moss, $284.83 to Del Rio High School Criminal Justice. Pro Color Studio, $745 to Dr. Fermin Calderon. Elementary Scholastic Builders LLC, $100 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Texas Community Bank, $100 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. The Spot, in the amounts of $76 to Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary and $116 to Ruben Chavita Elementary. Thelma Hernandez Rodriguez, $125 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Zertucci Services, $150 to Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad. Gaddy's Pizza, $1,094.40 to Del Rio High School Football. A non-monetary donation from Maria Merkel, Lisa Gutierrez, and Deborah Smith, meals valued at $248 to Del Rio Middle School Student Council. And the USA beat Ghana in the World Cup.
Okay,
USA.
Thank you. And as always, we appreciate and we publicly thank all those individuals and organizations that donated to the support of the students of the district. Agenda item 9, citizens to be heard. Ms. Falcone, was there any? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 10, administration A, nominations for TASB Board of Directors for TASB Region 15. I included that in your packet. It's under this yellow tab. That came to me about a week or so ago. It should be self-explanatory. There's an expiring term of one of the TASB directors, and this information indicates that a school board within that region can nominate a member of its board to be a candidate. So I wanted to put it on there to see if there was any interest on behalf of the board or any board members. There's no guarantee that the person would be selected, but if you look on the bottom of that first page, where it says to nominate an individual from your local school board, there's several forms that would have to be submitted, and those items, this is about the fourth or fifth line down, says those 4 items must be received in the TASB Austin headquarters no later than June 30th, 2014. So if this is something that the board is interested in doing, we would need to take action on it. Mr. Mesa, are you have any interest?
Okay, Mr. Contreras, his term is expired?
His term is expiring. The way
But he's seeking re-election.
but he is seeking re-election. So, but the way I read it, a board can nominate one of their own, and might get on the ballot. Might.
Sure.
Are you interested? Okay. Seems like Mr. Mesa is interested. So.
I second his nomination.
Okay, well, let me just make it clear. Okay, so since Mr. Mesa, who has expressed an interest, I recommend that the San Felipe Del Rio CISD Board of Trustees nominate Mr. Raymond P. Mesa for the TASB Region 15 position on the TASB Board of Directors, and we direct administration to assist in that paperwork that's necessary.
I have one question.
Yes.
It says that there are 4 meetings during the year. Does that hold true?
I think so, yes.
Like a board meeting once a month?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. So, okay, we made a recommendation. Looks like we're in favor of that. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt's motion. Ms. Martinez Lozano, a second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. So, would y'all get with Mr. Mesa about that paperwork? We get it signed and sent off, and we'll see if you prevail. We'll see what happens. We'll look forward to it. Okay. It brings us to agenda item 10B, consideration to approve the adoption of the district's vision and goals as currently written. This is just really a formality. I didn't want to let the board meeting go by without mentioning, of course, we did the Tier 2 workshop where we had a chance to look at all of those components of governance and the requirements of training and things like that. So really kind of the process as the summer goes on and Dr. Rios develops or works further with his superintendent performance goals is really for the board to, again, kind of reaffirm the district vision and goals. I know we said there wasn't any need to change anything. We were happy and pretty comfortable with the way they were set at this time. So I recommend that we approve the adoption of the district vision and goals as currently written. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motioned. Is there a second? Ms. Lozano Martinez is second. All in favor by a show of hands. It's unanimous. Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to agenda item 12, because there's nothing under 11, curriculum instruction. So under 12, facilities and operations, A, consideration to approve the design development phase of the Del Rio High School Walter Leverman Ram Stadium restroom and concessions renovations and additions. Mr. Salinas is ill, so once again, Mr. Dunlap.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Rios. We're here tonight to present the design development drawing on the Ram Stadium. We have our first slide is a site plan that shows the two areas either side of the tower where we're going to be expanding the dressing rooms and the concession areas. As you can tell, it just about doubles the present area of each of those toilet rooms and concession stands on it. There's a little bit of work that we're going to need to be doing on either side, but some grading work down towards the parking area. Once these buildings are built, we're going to bring some topsoil back in and some grass. This is a floor plan of the women's toilet room area with the concession over on the left-hand side. There are in the women's toilet room, there are presently 6 toilets. We will be adding 12 toilets for a total of 18.
It's working.
Presently 4 lavatories, and we'll be adding 7 more for a total of 11 lavatories. We have some additional plans in a minute on the concession area that you'll be able to see a little bit more detail on that. The lavatories that we're proposing to use are they're combination lavatories. They're not single individual lavatories. And they come in pairs of 2, 3, and 4. And we're able to utilize those. They take up a little bit more area than a single lavatory, but I think they're going to be easier on the cleaning and maintenance. We're also, on the new toilets, we're adding an additional handicap toilet up in the upper right-hand corner on this plan. There is presently one in the existing toilet rooms. The new lavatories will all be set for handicapped height, and we're looking at probably taking a couple of those and lowering those for children. There's a difference of about 3 or 4 inches that we're allowed to drop down for smaller or younger kids on it. We haven't made a decision on that, but that's something we're looking at. Typically in a residence, your lavatories are like 30 inches high. And in this case, for wheelchair access, they're going to be 34 inches high for adults. And then they'll be 30 inches high for children, which means adults can still use the lower ones on it. This is a men's toilet room. This is on the north side. Essentially we have the same thing. We're adding another handicapped toilet stall. This is in the upper right-hand corner of the new toilet room. In this case, let's see, in the men's area we have existing 2 toilets. We're adding 5. We'll have a total of 7 toilets. There are 4 existing urinals. We'll be adding 8 for a total of 12. Lavatories, there are 4. We'll be adding 7 for a total of 11. We think this will get the stadium pretty much in compliance with the number of fixtures that would be required for close to what would be required for 4,000 seats. Are there any questions on the toilet rooms?
Mrs. Martinez-Lozano has a question.
Can we go back to the women's, please? That kind of oval circular, is that a fan? No.
It looks like an oval on that. I think that's distortion. It's really a circle. It's a 5-foot turning radius for a wheelchair.
Oh, okay.
I think when it's on here, it's a circle, but on that, it projects out as an oval.
And this is something I hadn't thought about when we met last week to look at this. But currently in the women's, there is a baby changing table.
Right, there is.
Right. Is there room to add an additional one?
It would be real tight.
It would.
We could add another one in the existing restroom to the side of that one.
I mean, I don't know how much that might be needed, but there are a lot of little kids there at our games. Just a thought.
I mean, should we get with the committee and check on that then?
See if there's a need.
Okay.
That would be, just to ask them, see what they think. That would be great.
Okay. This is a plan of the south concession. It is adjacent to the women's toilet room area. The existing concession has been enlarged by taking out a interior non-load bearing partition. And in that area, we're putting an ice machine and refrigerator cooler. It will be enclosed and air conditioned. We have also discussed air conditioning the toilet rooms. It does not add that much more expense since we're already having to heat it anyway, but that is in discussion on it. The concession area will be air conditioned. There'll be windows at the cashier, at the stand in front, and there are 4 windows there. We'll have cabinet work in the existing area on 3 sides. There'll be a pass-through that's about 8 feet wide from the new addition into the existing portion of the concession area. In the new portion, we're able to install a triple compartment sink for cleanup. We also have a janitor's sink. And mainly shelving and storage lockers that can be closed up for individual groups to use. Mainly they're tables for food preparation. In the new portion on it, I guess as the food is prepared, they'll pass that through to the front portion on it. What we've done on both the men and the women's, we've shown a couple of different layouts with the where the microwaves might go, the pizza warmers, hot dogs, popcorn, so that we'll be sure to have enough plugs when everything's finished on it. The men's side of the or the north side of the concession on it will have plugs on a different layout to where if you need to take a hot dog warmer, move it to another table, there will be a plug there for that. Are there any questions on this side of on the south concession?
There has been added, what would you call it, space along the front, like where you go and stand. You know how there's in the walkway where people line up? Yeah, that's been expanded, right?
No, it's really about the same length as it is right now.
Okay.
I think what we've talked about is getting people through there quicker.
I don't know that.
There's more room for more people to work on that.
To work.
Because you don't have all the people running around right behind them now. They'll be in the other room, so you have your people serving the food. 3 or 4 people have plenty of room to dish it out and get it out.
Yeah, that's really when we started out, that was kind of the bottleneck. But I think we were able to work that out. The men's side is very similar to the north side is very similar to the south side, other than we have some electrical gear that runs along this side right here. And we're going to put those behind some doors, cage doors, so that be a little more protected. Right now, they're just electrical panels with electrical panel doors on them, but still, I think it'd be better to have some metal doors over those on it, at least wire mesh doors. Other than that, everything is pretty much the same as the other plan. It's just been reversed, but we did show some things like, I think on this one we have crock pots here, whereas on the other one we had crock pots on the table out there. So we'll have plugs both here and here for crock pots. These are basically plans we'll give to our mechanical engineer so that he'll know where to put outlets and so forth. Are there any questions?
Mr. Mesa?
I think I read somewhere that you're adding floor drains.
We're going to be adding some floor drains in this, but I'm not sure in the existing toilet rooms. I don't think we are.
No.
The new toilet rooms, the existing concession, and the new concession will be adding floor drains in there.
I read that somewhere. I just wanted to find out if it's still going to go in.
just run through these elevations. You know, show you the bottom one there is the west front elevation. It looks very similar to the way it does right now. We're really not trying to change the look. There are some louvers on there that we're going to try to utilize. It depends a lot on how our mechanical engineer decides to ventilate this and air condition. This is a section through the building. The portion on the right-hand side is the existing building. The portion on the left-hand side is there is the new addition. We're going to be about 5 feet out of the ground right here. It'll take quite a bit of farm work to do that. We did this when we added the stadium seating. We had some conditions like this where our footings actually went into the ground, 5 to 7 feet below, and then actually they came up 8 or 10 feet higher than the ground. Our proposal on the inside of the toilet rooms is to use concrete block partitions with ceramic tile and utilizing solid phenolic toilet room doors. Basically, they are a modified plastic that is solid color all the way through. We've been using those for about the past 8 or 10 years, and they've been holding up good. We still haven't decided for sure on colors, but the women's, this is shown in blue and beige. The men's is very similar, showing that in a gray and a blue.
Is that like royal blue or baby blue? I mean, it's showing baby blue, but.
I think it's the way it turned out.
Okay.
What we selected was Del Rio blue.
Okay. I was concerned.
Royal blue, Del Rio blue.
Yeah, I'm Del Rio blue.
Now that looks more like a baby blue. The louvers over on the left turn more of the blue that we would be using on it. Right there. The blue would be a little bit darker than that right there. This is kind of perspective looking at the interior of the women's. And an interior of the men's.
Very nice.
Are there any questions?
Any questions? Remember, this was the item tabled last month for more clarity and more information, so, questions? Okay.
I do have
Oh,
a question. We had talked about motion soap dispensers and paper towel. I wasn't sure if that was, because we were able to incorporate that or not.
I think we're looking for paper towels. I think that was the decision at the last meeting. And the motion, infrared, I think is a possibility on that.
Great.
Unless, someone objects to it, I think Dennis might have a question on it, because he's the one that's gonna have to be maintaining.
Oh,
The soap dispenser should be.
but the paper towels, no?
We don't typically use those right now within our district, so that would be something. The roll is probably the same size, but we'd have to check into that. See what the cost might be or whatever, if it'll fit in.
But you're
That's
also
more
talking about
sanitary.
the water at the lavatories.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
The water at the lavatories, being able to put your hands under there and
CISD Board of Trustees approve the Walker Lebanon Ram Stadium restroom and concession renovations and addition project design development phase documents as presented and authorizes the administration to move forward with the construction document and bidding phase, excuse me.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motioned. Is there a second? Dr. Keyes is second. All in favor by show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 12B, consideration to approve the design development phase of the Del Rio High School freshman new restroom and concession building.
This is the concession and courtroom dressing area, and we have located that between the high school baseball field and the tennis court. We're still have not made a definite decision on the actual layout of the or the orientation of the plan in between the two. But we picked up a couple of different items and comments, and we'll probably end up with an orientation like this to where the tennis courts are up and the baseball field is down on that plan right there. That puts the concession area to the right. The dressing rooms opening up to the tennis court. The toilet rooms opening up on the baseball field side. To look at the plan itself, we've the concession area is this area right here. We have originally had the toilet rooms right here, men and women's. They have a janitor room that opens up to the outside. They can take care of the whole building. On this one, we have added a girls' dressing area and a boys' dressing area. And one of the requests was to have some lockers in each one of those on it. I'm sure, one would be used by the tennis and maybe one by the baseball athletic program. And another item that we've added is a coach's office. It's a small room. It's probably about 8 by 10, but enough for 2 coaches and a desk, small toilet room, and small athletic storage area. The building itself is still pretty small. It's about 40 feet by 40 feet. The finishes on the inside, we'll be using painted concrete for the floors, ceramic tile on the walls, and again, concrete block partitions with ceramic tile and solid phenolic doors. In the girls' dressing area, we're going to use stalls with shower curtains, and in the boys' area, it's just a bench with lockers. The building itself would be concrete block, painted on the outside. We're still studying elevations, trying to work out different details on it, but we're pretty close to the freshman campus, so we're going to try to make it tie in to the freshman campus look on it. These are the end elevations. section through the building, concrete block, steel joist. We'll either have a modified bitumen roof or a metal roof. We'll be studying that along with our roof consultant. Interior, we've kind of followed the same thing that we had on the stadium. It's ceramic tile, blue and beige for the girls' dressing area, and gray and blue for the boys. And blue is a little baby blue on it. It does look a little bit better on the screen here. Everything is almost exactly the same. Now, we did add a shower in each of the dressing rooms. Are there any questions?
Questions? Mr. Mesa?
So, I saw only one, well, actually, two drinking water fountains, but one for youth and one for an adult. Is that correct, on the outside?
Usually buy them in pairs, one's high, one's low. And we're going to be changing out the ones in the stadium on this one. Of course, these will be new on it.
Other questions?
How many do we have right now, Josh?
Out there?
Drinking fountains.
There's no fountains on site, correct? Out there? No, it's all trucked in by the athletic department, by the trainers during practice. So that'll be a constant water supply, which will be a good thing.
And Coach C and Coach Smith are happy.
It's gonna be your domain, ma'am. You're happy?
Yes. Coach Smith. Great.
Long time coming.
Recommendation?
I think so. It looks like everybody's.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the San Felipe Del Rio CISD Board of Trustees approve the Del Rio High School freshman new restroom concession dressing room building project design development phase document as presented and authorize the administration to move forward with the construction document and bidding phase.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motion, Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands. Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 12C, consideration award RFP number 14-13 Del Rio High School Student Parking Lot Paving Project.
We took bids on the student parking area on May the 15th at 3 o'clock. And there is a bid tabulation and floor plan, I think, in your package on it. But the parking area includes all of the student parking area except what was recently, I'd say recently done in the last few years. This parking lot right here, that was expanded about 5 or 6 years ago. So the older portion of the parking lot, which is all of this right here, is being repaved with 1.5-inch asphalt. The striping for the parking lot is going to go back almost to the exact same spot. We're not really proposing to change anything, although there are a couple of items where we need to take a handicap ramp and make it comply with the new requirements on it. I think all of them comply except for one. I think it's this one right here. It doesn't have enough room to the side for the wheelchair access. The others, though, do comply. I can't remember how many parking places there were. There were 200 and some odd, I think. But anyway, those will remain. The paving itself, when we took proposals, we asked for proposals for cold mix asphalt and hot mix. And the hot mix was a little bit more, about $55,000 more, which was considerable. So we're looking at staying with the cold mix. The parking lot immediately north of this is the faculty parking area, and that was done a number of years ago with 1.5-inch cold mix, and it seems to be holding up pretty good on it. But it's been there, what, 10 years? 8 to 10 years on it. And so anyway, that's what we're proposing on this. The bid tabulation, we received 3 bids. Two of the people that had plans did not bid it. The 90 West Contractors was $184,570.36, and 30 days construction time. Frontier Construction was $239,924, 30 days construction time. Reese Albert was $175,000 with 60 days construction time. The alternate hot mix varied from $50,304 to $60,694, and I think that was kind of out of the budget for what we're looking at on it. The 60 days, we are looking at having Reese Albert do that in 45 days on it. And so our recommendation to the school would be the $175,000 with 45 days. That way they'll have it ready by August the 10th.
Questions?
Well,
Mr. Mesa?
so that 45-day limit would be, I mean, it's already been communicated to Reese Albert?
With Reese Albert,
Yes,
45 days.
and he's agreed to it?
Right, well,
Of course, like,
we're gonna have to negotiate that, but, yeah, he's, I think they'll go along with that.
Mr. Mesa, if I may. Mr. Salinas and I had a conversation early last week, and he reached out to them. He was confident that they could do it within that time. And that's gonna be we won't sign the contract otherwise because the students will be here. So we want your permission to move forward, to negotiate the contract, which will indicate 45 days.
because sometimes, I mean, if they have major projects that they don't have the manpower, I don't think that, they can complete it in this time.
I did talk to them about their scheduling, and they are gonna be doing the junior college over here about the same time, so it's gonna work out good for them.
Anything else? Okay, recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the San Felipe Del Rio Consolidated Independent School Board of Trustees authorize the administration to negotiate a contract with Reese Albert, Inc. of San Angelo, Texas, for the Del Rio High School student parking paving project in accordance with RFP 14-13 base bid in the amount not to exceed $175,000, and authorize the superintendent of schools to sign the contract.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motioned. Is there a second? Mr. Mesa is second. All in favor by show of hands. Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Agenda item 13A, consideration to approve submittal of grant applications to expand the career and technical education extracurricular robotics program. Valdez, are you presenting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because it says Mr. Gonzalez, but,
Mr. Gonzalez wasn't able to make it, so he asked if I could present on his behalf. Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, board members. The Career and Technical Education Program is requesting approval to apply for any grant as it relates to the robotics competitions for the 14-15 school year. The reason that we're asking for a pre-approval is because of the short time frame that is usually implied when you're applying for a grant. And these grants include, but are not limited to, US First, First in Texas, Texas Workforce Commission, Time Warner Cable, and Walmart. These grants, of course, would allow for the teams to use these funds for grant allowable expenses. Again, this is just a pre-approval. We do not have a board policy that states the grants have to be pre-approved for submission. However, we do have it as a budget procedure in order to ensure that the district is aware of any commitments that are in line with any particular grant. Are there any questions?
questions? No questions? Okay, so this is going to facilitate the grant process specifically for robotics. That way we don't find, or they don't find themselves in the position where there could have been money, but there wasn't. But it'll also be under strict scrutiny by administration as something is applied for, right?
Yes, sir. We do have it, and we do communicate it as part of our budget procedures that the CFO needs to be aware in order to be able to communicate it to the board via board communique.
Okay. Now, of course, we're also mindful that several weeks ago there was a public speaker or public forum. And so how does this tie in with providing more support for robotics? I mean, how does this facilitate the growth of robotics in general?
Well, in relation to the availabilities of the grant, I know we've had, I wouldn't say limited, but we haven't allowed because of the time frame for them to apply. So this would increase funding for the programs. Most of the grants that have been identified have been mainly at the Duro Middle School level. However, they do exist at the secondary level, but this would just open the doors for them. Again, they would work with myself and make sure that it's communicated to the board and make sure that we're in compliance with the grant requirements. But this would just facilitate the process for them because of the short time frame.
Okay. All right. And this is the last question. This is probably more of a question for maybe Dr. Rios or Dr. Garza. I mean, this is a good thing, certainly, I think. What is the short-term and perhaps intermediate goal for robotics as a program? Is that something that administration is contemplating? I mean, how do we go to the next level? This is 3 years in a row, or 2 years in a row now, that it's been distinguished, right, in the community. We even have it on the sort of recruitment brochure out in the lobby, you know, that program is a standout and something. So are we working on a plan of sorts, or are we having discussions? We don't have to go through a lot of detail. I think what we're looking for is
He's delegating.
Thank you, appreciate it. No, I appreciate him. He's definitely been instrumental in the plan that we come up with. But we've had a series of meetings with the robotics leadership at the high school. And initially what we proposed to them for this coming year was to expand the base of coaches, because it is very, it just requires a lot of time. We talked to the leadership, and we said, why don't we add 4 assistant coaches to level out the amount of time that's required. That would give just temporary assistance, and then let's take this here to examine how we can create it into a pathway where some of the construction of the robots, the design of the robots would happen during the school day. But we have to be careful in how we move in that direction, because as we create another pathway, we have to be careful of how it takes students away from the Project Lead the Way, for example. So they were very agreeable to it. It does have small budget implications in terms of the additional coaches and having, so we're gonna have a tier where we have 1 or 2 head coaches and then have 4 assistant coaches. And that'll give them time to work with the students and time to research the other programs that we could develop as just regular classes that they would take within the CTE department. It'll also give us time to make sure that we have a certified person, because as we take the 2 current coaches and create other classes for them, if they will teach for robotics, it will take away from Project Lead the Way. Somebody has to step up and be fully trained to teach those classes. And that's our goal for this coming year. So there's an immediate plan and then a long-term plan.
Good. Yeah, I think that's what we've been looking for, some sort of definition as to where does the program go from this point. Okay. Anything else? Okay, the recommendation. Oh,
I was just curious, you're not the one that's going to be applying for the grants, correct?
No, ma'am.
But they will, whoever applies will seek approval before, from you before they proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
that's the
Yes.
strict scrutiny that I was wondering, yeah.
Just wondering if it's before, or, oh, by the way,
Oh, no. it's
we applied.
before. We've had several discussions, and I feel everybody's aware of the process. But yes, we've had several discussions about that.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, the recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the submittal of the applications to US First, First in Texas, Texas Workforce Commission, Time Warner Cable, and Walmart, and other related robotics grants to expand the career and technical education extracurricular robotics program.
For the recommendation, I so move to accept. Is there a second? Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. Brings us to 13B, consideration approved submission of application for the 2014-15 Carl Perkins E-Grant application for federal funding to the appropriate headquarter authority. Again, Mrs. Valdez in place of Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir. This is an annual process, and the following 3 agenda items are also for application submission for federal funding. In this agenda item, we have the Carl Perkins grant, which our preliminary amount is $132,769, and this is an $8,647 increase to prior year. Or, I'm sorry, to our current year right now.
Any questions on this? The recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the submission of the Carl Perkins grant to be used for the CTE program at the Del Rio High School to be submitted to the appropriate headquarter authority for the 14-15 year as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Ms. Lozano has motioned. Is there, Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 13C, consideration to approve submission of application for the 2014-15 SAS Special Education E-Grant application for federal funding to the appropriate headquarter authority. Dr. Aguirre presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. We have, like Mrs. Yanakani said, this is an annual process, and we have received our planning amounts for the special education entitlements, which are Idea B formula and Idea B preschool, for approval to submit to the appropriate headquarter authority. Our Idea B formula planning amount is $1,625,628, and Idea B preschool $44,877, for a total of $1,670,505. Any questions?
Questions? No. Okay, the recommendation.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the submission of the special education E-grant application for the federal special education to the appropriate headquarter authority for the 2014-2015 school year as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motion, Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 13D, consideration to approve submission of application for the 2014-15 consolidated E-grant application for federal funding to the appropriate headquarter authority. Michelle Smith presenting.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. I present for your consideration to approve submission of the application for the 2014-2015 NCLB Consolidated E-Grant application for federal funding to the appropriate headquarter authority as presented with the following planning amounts. For Title I, Part A, we have $3,434,471. For Title I, Part C, Migrant, we have $1,166,528. We are not eligible this year for Title I, Subpart 2. That would be the funds that would go to juvie. Title II, Part A, $652,994. Title III, Part A, LEP, that is $173,509. And for this year, we are receiving an additional funding for Title III, Part A, Immigrant, in the amount of $44,000.
Questions? Okay, the recommendation.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves the submission of the NCLB Consolidated E-Grant application in the amount of $5,472,452 for the funding of federal programs to the appropriate headquarter authority for the 2014-2015 year as presented.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion, Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor by a show of hands? By show of hands. Unanimous, motion carries. Agenda item 13E, consideration to approve the superintendent and administration to finalize Mr. Rolfe's negotiations with the stop-loss carrier and authorize superintendent to sign the contract as negotiated for the 2014-15 fiscal year.
Good evening again. This is also again part of our annual process. Mr. Rouse is our insurance consultant, our health insurance consultant, and he's currently conducting an RFP for a stop-loss carrier for the next fiscal year. And the RFP has a due date of June 27th. Since our district is self-funded health insurance provider, to our employees, stop-loss carriers will only commit to 1 year at a time. Now again, since this is a 1 year commitment and we have a RFP process, as Mr. Rouse is negotiating the deals with the responses he receives from the RFP, at times they give us a very short time frame to respond and approve the RFP. And that's why we, again, as a part of an annual process, we request approval for the superintendent and administration to approve what is negotiated by Mr. Rouse on the RFPs.
Questions? No? Okay, recommendation.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approves for the superintendent and administration to finalize Mr. Ralph's negotiations with the stop-loss carrier and authorize the superintendent to sign the contract as negotiated for the 14-15 year.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Ms. Lozano has motioned. Is there a second? Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 13F, consideration to approve for the board president to appoint 3-member finance committee. Ms. Valdez.
As part of BDB Legal and BDB Local, the board president may appoint a committee, and in this case, it's a finance committee. This committees may also include district personnel and citizens, And the Finance Committee's function is to serve as an advisory, in an advisory capacity, and would meet with the CFO on a monthly basis prior to the board meetings. Now, we started, this was last presented to the board for approval at the June 2012 board meeting. Throughout your discussions, you could also request to change the time every year. We didn't set a time back then, and I didn't bring it up last year, but we could make this an annual process as well, if you so choose.
Okay. What's the board want to do? We've been doing, we being me, Mr. Overfelt, Ms. Haynes, for 2 years, nonstop. I know everybody has time commitments. I mean, no one, I'd be glad to keep doing it. I don't know if I want to do it for another 2 years, but certainly one more year. I don't know who else.
I just have a question regarding that. I mean, looks like the BDB local, no, maybe it's not local, talks about, making sure we don't meet, that we don't have a quorum.
Right. It's a 3-member committee.
However, we post that meeting, so truly it's an open meeting.
Well,
is that correct?
It's posted for 120% transparency. That way,
right.
It very clearly there's committees meeting, people are here, that sort of thing.
Right. And I'm just referring back to one of the comments that was made at our meeting with the service center. One of the comments was, the recommendation was that we should all attend.
Exactly.
Oh.
So I'm just trying to be considerate of whoever submitted that statement. So I just wasn't sure if we wanted to,
So you want all?
appoint
Oh.
3, no, that wasn't my comment, however, there was a comment made.
Ah, okay.
So do we want to consider
Just
that,
3.
since it's already open?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a thought, right?
Just,
Do we want to be the entire, no.
no.
What are you saying?
I know everybody's welcome to attend. Are the newer board members ready to get off? Is that?
No, it's been 2 years, and it seemed like, okay, well, maybe somebody else might want to do it.
I think y'all are doing a great job.
There's a vote of confidence.
Well, I don't know if Dr. Keys is interested in participating.
It's like the stop loss. Keep on going.
Okay.
No, my plate's too full.
I'm willing to do it for another year.
Likewise.
You also?
I can come anytime I want, right? You're not gonna bar me from coming.
No.
I know. Okay.
Okay, all right then. Well, I guess I recommend that, once again, Mr. Overfeld, Ms. Haynes, and myself be appointed to the Finance Committee. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion. Is there a second? Mr. Overfeld is second. All in favor by a show of hands. Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks. But,
Thank you, Ms. Valdez.
and with Ms. Valdez, we do try to kind of streamline it. That's why some of the reports look different, and hopefully it's more user-friendly. So thank you for doing that for us, helping us to do that. Okay, that brings us to 13G, consideration to approve submittal of grant application to help with cost on the Del Rio Middle School Palm Squad New York trip, Macy's Thanksgiving Parade on November 2014. Ida Gomez and Kayla Lopez presenting.
Good evening, Dr. Rios, Mr. Garabedian, members of the school board. The Del Rio Middle School Palm team is requesting permission to apply for a grant as it relates to the middle school Palm team New York trip to the Macy's Parade that will be held November 2014. The grants have a very limited time, 2 to 3 weeks period, to apply. This grant would include Walmart, but not limited to Walmart. The grant will allow the team to use these funds for traveling expenses for the New York trip. Any questions?
Questions? Okay, the recommendation?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the submission of the grant application to Walmart and other related grants to help with the team's traveling expenses to New York.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion, Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. There's nothing under agenda item 14, nothing under 15. That brings us to agenda item 16, closed session. Okay. It is now 8:50 p.m., June 16th, 2014, and the Board of Trustees will recess this open session and convene a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D&E. We're able to do that under 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.084. Specifically tonight, pursuant to 551.071, consultation with attorney, one being cause number 31173 in the 83rd Judicial District Court of Val Verde County, Texas. And B, pursuant to 551.074, discussion of personnel to hear complaints against personnel, one being discussion of the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations. Two, discussion of salary adjustments to include the following: justification, service credit, master's degree. Three, discussion of the approval of the federal and state programs director. And four, discussion of the approval of the construction manager. All final votes, actions, or decisions will be taken in open session. We're now in closed session. Now 9:53 p.m., June 16, 2014. And the Board of Trustees will now reconvene in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D&E. No action was taken in closed session. Now that we're reconvened into open session, that brings us to agenda item 17, with A being consideration to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations.
Good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. The administration recommends the following new hires for your consideration this evening. Ms. Christina Sanchez, mathematics teacher, Del Rio High School. Mr. Glafito Santillana, CTE Law Enforcement, Del Rio freshman. Ms. Sabrina Diaz, first grade teacher, Garfield Elementary. Ms. Rosa O. Ortiz, counselor at San Felipe Memorial Middle. Additionally, we'd like to recommend Ms. Sandra Green, first grade teacher at Lamar Elementary. Ms. Deborah Ponce, fourth grade bilingual teacher, Lamar Elementary. Ms. Monica Aguirre, second grade teacher, North Heights Elementary. We'd also like to recommend this evening Ms. Erica Varela, science instructional coach for freshmen in high school. And also Mr. Jaime Gonzalez, assistant principal at Del Rio High School.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motion. Is there a second? Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 17B, consideration to approve salary adjustments to include the following: justifications, service credit, and master's degree.
Yes, Mr. Garabedian, members of the board, Dr. Rios. The administration at this time recommends Ms. Sandra Davidson for a salary adjustment according to her service records, and also Mr. Patrick Navin, additionally service credit, salary adjustment for service credit.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Ms. Haynes has motioned. Is there a second? Mr. Overfelt has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. Agenda item 17C, consideration to approve federal and state programs director.
Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board, the administration would like to recommend Ms. Ida Gomez as the Director of Federal and State Programs.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motioned. Is there a second? Ms. Lozano has second. All in favor by a show of hands? 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor. All opposed? 1 opposed. Motion carries. Agenda item 17D, consideration of approved construction manager.
Mr. Garabedian, members of the board, and Dr. Rios, the administration at this time would like to recommend Ms. Antoinette Parker for our new construction manager.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion to accept. Is there a second? Mr. Overfelt is second. All in favor by a show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 2 opposed. Motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 17E, consideration to approve superintendent to secure legal counsel as discussed in closed session for cause number 31173 in the 83rd Judicial District Court of Val Verde County, Texas. I've had a chance to discuss this in closed session with the school district's attorney. So the only recommendation based on those discussions, I think we're all in agreement, is to direct the superintendent to secure legal counsel as discussed in closed session for cause number 31173 in the 83rd Judicial District Court of Val Verde County, Texas. So with that being the recommendation, I so move to accept. Is there a second? Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? 2, 3, 4, 5. 6 in favor, unanimous. Motion carries. Brings us to agenda item 19. No further business before this board. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Overfelt has motioned. Is there a second? Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.